So, hello, Dave.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Tony Gonzalez. I'm from Made in Metal, Spain. So, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Nice to be chatting with you. How are things in Spain?
Let me tell you that according to the lockdown news, it's really bad, but I try to avoid this because every day the news on television are saying the same.
Yeah.
And this, I think that attack the minds people, and I try to avoid it. So I think that in US, the situation is getting worse.
That's what they say. I don't know. That's why I play heavy metal and do rock and roll. Try to stay away from all that,
Yes. So Dave, let me tell you that when I was looking for information about this new CD no cover, I found that you are usually working 48 hours a day. Maybe because you are involved in several projects at the same time.
Yeah.
You are not the kind of man that say once at a time. No.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, look, for the last probably almost 20 years, I've been pretty entrepreneurial. I've been pretty resourceful. I like to collaborate on things. I always say the party's more fun when you invite all your friends, rather than trying to do it by yourself. And, to me, music was always, being in a band it was about the camaraderie, the friendship, and you're a gang. And, so for the same reason I don't watch the news, and pay attention to the hysteria, being in a band and playing music was always about sort of drifting off into our own little private club, and fortunately, look, there's several million other people around the world as fans and music listeners that like to do the same thing. So I say, hey, let's voyage onward to our own special place where music, soothes the soul and calms the mind, and I don't think it's a distraction. I think it's just literally taking us to a better place,
But I think that we need to change the subject because there are things that are more beautiful to talk about.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For example, now I think, and you will tell me that you left Megadeth in 2002 and you were out until 2010. But in the last 5 years, you have been more productive than in that period.
I would agree. For the record, Megadeth disbanded. I did not leave the group. Dave stepped away from the band, so the group essentially disbanded. But when it came back together in 2004, I was already active with some other things. Of course, we had the discussion about putting it back together, but it was a very different, kind of a different template. So I stayed the course on the things that I was doing at that time. And you're right. I mean, I think, look, there always has to be, partnership in things, I always say no one is a solo project, and it's interesting you say the last 5 years. I mean, that's since 2015 is when I met Tom Hazart, and Tom has been a terrific partner, manager, and sort of just a friend and advisor for me. He's had good instincts on things. I mean, he's a big Megadeth fan, and we're always respectful of where these things lie in the scheme of things. Obviously, when Megadeth puts out a record and ramps up, that takes up most of the bandwidth. But in the, we've had mostly since 2017 when we sort of officially kind of came off the Dystopia tour, and aside from a handful of, we did about 6 weeks in Europe in 2018, 2019, was mostly off the road, I mean, almost entirely off the road, actually, except for the Mega Cruise. So, I've had about 3 years here where it's allowed me to develop other things, everything from a coffee company to the Ellefson solo band, with the Sleeping Giants record last year, the No Cover record this year. We've got another album in the works for probably 2021. As well as, the record label and our book company and our film company and all these other things. So, you know, again, idle hands, as they say, can be the devil's workshop. So I say, well, put the devil to work. You know what I mean? It's, you know, make him work for you, not the other way around, you know? So, you know, I think you're right. These last 5 years have been productive. And I think we've, you know, there's good partnership between me and Tom, and that's certainly a big part of what's making it work.
Yes. One of the projects with Tom is the label group. So who select the bands and what is the criteria to be selected?
Well, initially when we started it, I saw it mostly as an outlet for me to be able to produce my own things and have an outlet to put them out. And in a way, it's kind of come full circle because it kind of is that again, especially with, you know, my own band, you know, putting my own records out. Of course, we acquired Combat Records, or we relaunched that. And so that was a big part of that. And as far as, you know, look, if, you know, I left a lot of the A&R and talent scouting to Tom. You know, it's funny with a label, you know, and the nature of this is, you know, we mostly do license deals. So people bring us finished products. We put those out, you know, and so by nature of that, those artists have to pretty much already have their brand, their name, their merchandising, their touring. They pretty much have to have that already in place. You know, the bigger labels like Sony and Warner Brothers and Universal, of course, you know, they have very deep pockets, and they're partly of their business model. They're in the business of developing brand new young talent, which is very expensive and very risky because young artists are always the trendsetters and the tastemakers that, you know, sort of dictate the next 5, 10, 20 years of music. And they, you know, they have a timeline, a time horizon, and of course the money to invest in that. And I've again got with Megadeth, I got to be part of that with Capitol Records. You know, I got to be part of that story in my own career. So I know what it is. With our labels, we do not do that, you know, so we have a very different business model. The younger bands that come to us, again, you know, it's more of a partnership with them. So a lot of the record business has changed, and certainly how we operate with our artists. It's really kind of on more of a partnership level with them.
Dave, related to the No Cover CD, tell me, who select the songs? Was Tom? It was you?
Most of them were mine. I mean, you know, Tom and I definitely went down the list. You know, you know, look, I started with Wasted from Def Leppard, you know, hence the homage to the album cover on the cover, because Tom understood the, you know, how important that On Through the Night record was for me. But things like Riff Raff and Nailed to the Gun, Not Fragile, I'll Be Your Zane, you know, those were, you know, large, probably 2/3 of it was mostly my choices. But, you know, me and Tom, we went back and forth on all of it. You know, like I said, Hey, Dead Kennedys. He said, Holiday in Cambodia. He said Wasp. I said Love Machine, you know. So, you know, it again, very collaborative because we're all part of it, you know, but a lot of it was dipping back into my early record collection, you know, things like Bachman Turner Overdrive and Sweet and even Fastway, you know, those kind of things that were, you know, to me, kind of musical game changers in my career.
I ask you because when I checked the set list, I discovered I knew that Tom has a heart attack in the middle of the recording.
Right.
And then one of the songs selected is Sheer Heart Attack from Queen.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe it was a bad mood situation.
No, actually we had already, it's funny. I called Tom and I said, dude, I want to do Sheer Heart Attack. And I didn't know how we were going to sing it because that's not necessarily Tom's vocal spot. And he goes, dude, we got Bumblefoot in the band. And I said, great. Bumble can sing anything, you know? Yes. So between Ron, Tom singing sort of a lower, you know, kind of the bass frequency. And then we added Doro on the top, you know, we sort of orchestrated the Queen, you know, vocal arrangement there. But no, that song was actually done and was being mixed. In fact, Tom would later joke, he said, you know, that he was talking to Bumblefoot, that he we no sooner recorded Sheer Heart Attack and then he went and had one. So, no, these songs were all picked. We started this, I think kind of first week of June is when the idea came, and we started tracking the songs. By mid-July, we were mixing. So this record came together very quickly in about a month's time. The mixing, it took about a month. Just between everything that went into it. And so by early September, I mean, this thing was wrapped up and done, and artwork, and, was ready to get submitted for production.
When you received the bad news that Tom had a heart attack, did you think to finish the record, or do you think to continue?
Well, it was certainly shocking. We had just had a conversation on a Sunday night. And then I called him a couple of times and he didn't pick up his phone. And then Monday morning, I woke up kind of early in the early morning, and my phone was blown up from Melody Myers, who does our design work, and Tom's family telling me that Tom was in hospital, had a heart attack. I was like, whoa. And there was for sure a moment for me that week, quite honestly, where I was just going, my God, number one, he survived the heart attack, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have it's like an earthquake. You have the big one, and then there's aftershocks,
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of going, geez, I hope he survives it. And I think it was a pretty sombering moment for me, to realize all that we've done over the last 5 years could just instantly come to a halt. It could just come to a stop. And, that I think certainly gave me some gratitude. Not that I didn't already have it for Tom, but, I think just sort of gratitude for what he's been to me as a friend and as a business partner. And also the pace at which we had been working, because, Tom and I are not necessarily 9-to-5 guys. Tom stays up most of the night. I'm up most of the day. And we meet somewhere in the evening hours, he's more of a creative type, marketing and stuff. So, it's ironically, I tend to handle kind of more of the logistics and some of the detail stuff of our businesses, So, between the two of us, it works. So it's the fact that he was able to finish it up. He only had a couple of things left to do, which he did. But that's why Over the Mountain and Sweet F.A., for instance, Tom just stepped back and he said, look, I'm going to just let Andrew Freeman take Over the Mountain. And Todd did an amazing job on Sweet F.A., and there wasn't really much more to add stylistically to it. So we just let those two guys take those on their own.
Before I forget, give my regards to Tom.
I will.
I wish he will be better.
Yeah, me too. And he is doing much better. So thank you for asking and for your shout out to him. And yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those things in life that, there's these moments that sort of stop you in your tracks and you just go, whoa, things can change on a dime like that, So, I think, look, we do everything here inside the Ellefson camp out of passion for doing it. It's not so much a job. Somehow it pays the bills. It's not like we have gone to the bank and taken loans and gone out and raised venture capital and done all these other things. I mean, I've looked at some of that stuff and we've just decided to keep it more organic and in-house and do it ourselves. And, that makes us work harder. It's like, look, there's a biblical scripture that, the lender owns the lendee, you know what I mean? So when right now we go to work for ourselves, as soon as you take someone else's money from the bank or a private equity loan or something, now you work for them, you know what I mean? So I think, we decided last year, it was like, as difficult as sometimes this can be working, again, with not a lot of financial resources, was, better to make our own way, be self-supporting through our own efforts. Because that was one of the things I said right up front. I said, look, I'm not going to take my rock star money I've made with Megadeth and other things, that I'm not going to go just blow it all on a bunch of, cottage industry businesses. These things, if we're going to do them, they have to survive on their own. And so that's how we've run the business is kind of with a zero investment, sweat equity. You know, that's what has been making it work.
So let's talk a little about some songs. For example, something that I like it a lot was Listen to Doro in Love Me Like a Reptile from Motorhead, because she is a huge fan, a huge Motorhead and Lemmy fans. Yeah. Did you know that?
We did. In fact, the first thing we asked her to do was to sing on Sheer Heart Attack. And then when she did that, we tethered it out to her, said, hey, would you want to sing on a Motorhead song? And she asked which one. And we said, Love Me Like a Reptile. She goes, oh, a perfect choice, you know, and she jumped in. So, and she said that, you know, that she's obviously was a big, dear friend to him, which is why we asked her, you know. That also has my childhood friend, Greg Handevitt, on it. Me and Greg used to play that song in high school bands. Like we would get hired to go play the high school prom. And, you know, instead of playing like sappy ballads by Air Supply, we'd play Love Me Like a Reptile by Motorhead, you know. So, you know, that's why I asked Greg to be part of it, because we had a history with that song as well. So, you know, and Tom and Doro actually sang, I put together a Kiss jam, a jam of Kiss songs, I should say, on the Mega Cruise last year. And so Tom and Doro got to sing together on that. So it was fun to just kind of bring it all back together again a year later and get everybody playing together on this record.
But does it mean that the guests could select the song, or you take this detail with Doro because she's the queen of metal?
Yeah, no, we determined who was going to sing on which song. And of course we asked them, you know, if they wanted to do it. But you know, the record did not start out as the intention of being an all-star record. It was the Ellefson band cutting these songs. And as we were, you know, just both Tom and I were chatting with friends, you know, the idea came as like, you know, let's ask them to be a part of this. You know, everybody's off the road. We're sitting at home. No tours are happening. And a lot of it was a way to just kind of put some wind in everybody's sails and get everybody excited about doing some music together. You know, a lot of our friends were doing internet, you know, kind of quarantine projects on YouTube and stuff. We thought, you know, this kind of goes to the next level of sort of solidifying it forever as a master, you know, that's out there. So Charlie Benante was one of the first people Tom was chatting with, and asked him, and, you know, and then he goes, look, why don't you ask Dirk? And I said, and we hit Chuck Beeler, and of course we hit up Jason McMaster, and then the idea came up to hit up Al Jorgensen, and, you know, so it just really fell into place very naturally. And, you know, to ask Doro, because I wanted a female voice on Sheer Heart Attack. I felt like it needed it. And that's where the idea came to get Doro involved. And so it's great to have her on 2 songs. All the better, you know.
I have a huge imagination. And when I listen, Not Fragile from BTO, I imagine that a bass player like Fred Turner makes you to choose the bass as an instrument to play.
You know, you're right. I opened when I was probably 10 years old, maybe. I had a friend of mine actually had the Bachman Turner Overdrive vinyl, and it was a gatefold, so it would open up, and the inside was a big band photo of BTO. And Randy's got his Strat, Blair Thornton's got his SG, and CF Turner in the middle with his Rickenbacker 4001, and I just fell in love with the bass. The first song is Not Fragile, so the record opens with the bass thing, and then that heavy riff. I was like, that is so freaking cool. I never heard anything like that at 10 years old, you know? And so, you know, at that point I was listening to the radio, and it was Motown and Neil Diamond and, you know, stuff that I still like. I love all that stuff over on that side. But when it came to like rock guitars, I'm like, whoa, that is freaking awesome. So, you know, to me, to cover Not Fragile, you know, in a way that was a song that was kind of my first exposure to really, what I would call heavy metal, certainly hard rock, it was called in those days, you know. It wasn't hippie rock, it wasn't acid rock, it was freaking hard, you know, hard hitting stuff. So that's why I wanted to put that song in. And actually, you know, I hit Tal Bachman, who's Randy's son, you know, and Tal has had a great career as himself, you know. So I hit Tal, I said, hey, you mind shooting this over to your dad? And then I guess then they sent it over to Fred Turner, and I guess they both gave it a thumbs up. So, you know, that to me was just as much the fun of doing it was to get the seal of approval from the guys who wrote and recorded it.
Yes. So Not Fragile, Sweet FA, and Love Hurts were originally recorded in 1974. Mm-hmm. Love Hurts is an older song, but Nazareth made it famous.
Right.
That means that did you listen those songs in 1974?
Yep.
You were a baby on a primary school.
So growing up on the farm in Minnesota, my family has a pretty big farming operation there, and so my dad would hire workers to work on the farm there was a vocational school in Jackson, Minnesota, and a lot of those guys, as they were in from out of town going to school, they would be available to hire them to work on the farm to make extra money. So there's one guy. His name is Gary Rignier, and we're still friends with him, my family. And he's the one who had the BTO 8-track. And so he'd play it in the tractor when I'd ride. And my dad had these pretty big, comfortable John Deere tractors, so before I could drive them, I'd ride with the hired guys, and they would be listening to this stuff, And I remember hearing Love Hurts, sometimes the hired guys, they'd have, my dad would let them have like a party at the house or something, and because we had a swimming pool there and stuff on the farm, so he would let them use that. So I remember hearing Love Hurts in particular there. I remember hearing, the BTO, Not Fragile record in the tractor with the on hired hand Gary. So yeah, this stuff was around. And then, it's funny, around that time I had a school bus driver who was the pastor's son, ironically, the pastor of our church. And the son, Dwight, was very cool, and he had long hair, and he's a rocker guy. So he would listen to this radio station called WLS AM out of Chicago. And, in the morning when my brother and I got picked up to go to school, those were the songs that were out. BTO had a big hit off Not Fragile called You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Styx had some tracks out, Lorelei, Lady, these things. Sweets off of Desolation Boulevard album, they had Ballroom Blitz, which was kind of their big explosion into the USA. And those were pretty heavy songs, heavy songs with great guitar playing. The harmonies were great, especially with Styx and Sweets, and a couple years later, Shouted Out Loud by Kiss was on the radio, and that had great harmonies, great guitar playing. So that was the stuff that, that I was getting exposed to. Peter Frampton, I guess, probably too, around that time. So the 70s to me that's my sweet spot, and that's why there's, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 songs, from that period. Even Sheer Heart Attack, I guess, was from the 70s, from the News of the World album, so that's the stuff that got me into this whole mess of rock and roll,
Yes. So I felt very happy when I listened Not Fragile, but there is another song that I like it a lot, and I was amazed when I listened to that. It was Nailed to the Gun. Mm-hmm. Who select Nailed to the Gun? It's from Fight, the project.
I chose that, and here's what's funny: we were in June, starting to get the record was underway, and I got a notification on my phone. I pushed through from YouTube. I had a band called F5 back in the 2000s, and we did a cover of Nailed to the Gun, and I had Jimmy DeGrasso play drums on it. And so I hit Andy and Tom. I said, "Oh my God, we've got to do Nailed to the Gun. Like, what a perfect song for this." So I hit Jimmy DeGrasso, and Tom said, he goes, "Dude, we got to get Russ Parrish, other known as Satchel from Steel Panther now, because Russ was in Fight and played on that track. So we got him to come in and do a cover of his own song. Which was great. So it was really, just a great convergence of all these things coming together. And it's funny because, Nailed to the Gun kind of bookmarked the end of the record in, the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And then we covered stuff from the 80s, and then, of course, back to, like you said, 1974. So kind of 74 to 94, somewhere in, is kind of the 2 decades that we covered during this record.
Yes. So something that made me feel good is, for example, you and me are from different cultures. I was born in Cuba, you know, the Latin rhythm and then, but you and me, so I cannot tell you that I will select this song. I'm not a singer, but I like the selection a lot. So maybe this is, or is this because even when we are from different points in this world and with maybe different cultures, your culture is more heavier than mine, but we feel good with the same songs.
I would agree. I mean, I've seen that with Megadeth, you know, that our music being heavy, being very musical and, you know, kind of progressive at times, it translates very well into the Latin culture. I saw it very early on in Italy, Spain, and then once we started going into South America in the 90s, in Mexico, I saw it just translate really incredibly well. So you're right. There is something about the weight of this music that, you know, that seems to carry across all of the cultural divides, you know. I think part of it is the rhythm. Part of it is this sort of kind of like a bulldozer into a wall. There's a heaviness about it. You know, I don't know what more to explain it other than I guess it just like it speaks to the restless soul maybe a little bit, you know. And so that's, you know, I'm happy because I'm glad I'm not the only one who likes it, you know. And I think there's a reason, like these bands, these artists we covered all had big success, you know, Queen, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Sweets, you know, all of them, you know, Wasp, of course, Cheap Trick, you know, they've all had huge success around the world. And it's funny, people, regardless of your age or whatever you grow up liking, there's something about these songs that connect with people. And, you know, I think as an artist and as a recording artist, that's always the thing you hope for when you put a record out, is that it's going to connect and people are going to go, yeah, I like that, you know. So I think we accomplished that in this album. It seems to have resonated with people all around the world.
Yes. Maybe 2-3 years ago, you were here in Spain in a festival called Leyendas del Rock in Vienna. I was there, and I remember that the people from Vienna were happy, and I listened to people on the box office paying the ticket and saying, the only time that Megadeth could be here in Vienna is because there is this festival. Yes?
That was the one down in the south, right? It was down in the south.
Yes, Alicante.
Yes. Yep. I remember it. That's probably true because it's not an area. It's not a, yeah, it was kind of a very rural area. I remember the town was actually all closed up, I think, because of the summer holiday. I remember walking around at night. There's literally nobody there. There was a castle up on the hill. And yet, you know, look, Steve Harris was there with British Lion, UFO, the Cavalieras were there with Cavalera Conspiracy. So yeah, it was a very cool festival, and again, kind of like this album, a convergence of a lot of different music. I think Hammerfall or something might have been there. It was some other big Stradivarius or some other you know, big bands were there. So, and I think that's the beauty of what you do in Europe with these festivals, in a way that nobody else does. Is you throw these big parties, and you get everybody to come. So yeah, I remember it very well. It was a super great festival.
Yes. So I know that for logical reason, before finishing the interview, I should ask, are they going to have a new Megadeth record? Are we going to see Megadeth again alive?
Yeah, no, for sure. We're working on the album now. There's tour dates posted on Megadeth.com starting in June. There's some dates posted for Russia and across Europe and UK. The metal tour of the year with Megadeth, Lamb of God, Trivium, and In Flames has been rescheduled to July and August 2021. And, you know, with a new record coming out, that of course, you know, triggers a whole world tour. So The answer is yes to both of those. Working obviously strategically around the pandemic, you know, and so there's some things there that none of us have any answers to yet. But hopefully with the vaccine and everything happening right now, that hopefully, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and
yes,
everything is, you know, positive and favorable for Megadeth and for everybody, you know.
Yes. So Dave, if to say goodbye, if you want to say something to the Spanish fans or something, it's your moment.
Sure. Well, I don't know if muchas gracias is the right way to say it in Spain. That's how we would say it over here. But thank you for all your supports, and definitely looking forward to getting back to Spain, both with Megadeth and possibly some Ellefson solo dates at some point, you know, to go out. You know, we record these songs because we want to go play them live. You know, to me, recording is a means to an end. You know, it's a way to sort of get out and do that. So, you know, but yeah, Spain, thank you for all your support to us for so many years. So look forward to seeing you soon.
I didn't ask because I was thinking that you don't get the idea to bring this band alive. But I would like to see you if Bumblefoot go with you,
yeah,
and Tom and another drummer, Paolo, or any other.
Well, we actually have plans to do that, and we've not announced the Europe portion of that. Our Japan and Australia dates from May have been rescheduled now till November 2021. But we do have some plans for bringing the Ellefson band over to Europe, which would include Spain, as best I know. So, you know, again, pandemic provided, you know, and all the scheduling now of everything else. Hopefully we can make that announcement soon, and probably early in 2021. And hopefully we'll see you on tour.
Of course, Dave. So please take care of yourself and take care of your family.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you on tour again. Okay?
Sounds good. Thanks. Good. Bye. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Bye. Merry Christmas to you and your family. It was Tony Gonzalez from Made in Metal. Bye.
Perfect. See ya. Bye-bye.